Hey, this is Andrew Brown from ExamPro, and it's really important that we know how to monitor our virtual machines so we can kind of check their performance or do some diagnostics on them. And so a couple of things we're going to look into. We're going to set up some virtual machines, and we're going to look into automation accounts, log analytics, and metrics and alerts, okay? So the first thing we'll need to do before we do anything else is make sure that we have particular resource providers enabled. So go to the top here, and as always, go to your subscriptions, and we will click into our subscription, go all the way down to the bottom, click on resource providers. And there's two in particular we're looking for. One is for alerts, so it's alerts management. So make sure that is registered. If it's not, press that button. And then we want insights. So make sure insights is enabled as well. They should be by default, but just in case they're not, you should go ahead and do that. So we are going to need some virtual machines. I'm going to set up 3. And the reason I want to do that is just to show you that there's many different ways in Azure to do the exact same thing. And sometimes when you do something, it just works. And sometimes it just doesn't. And it can work again and not again. So I want to give you a few different options available to you. So the first thing we're going to spin up is a virtual machine. And this one in particular, we'll make a new group. And we're going to call it DAX. And so we're going to choose for this one an Ubuntu Linux. I'm going to switch it over. I'm going to choose a minimal install. So we'll choose this one over here, which is the Ubuntu Server Minimal. And what I'll do is name this. And there's a bunch of different DAXs in Star Trek. So we're going to go with Curzon DAX here. And we'll put all this in East US, so wherever it defaults here. So if that's where it wants to go, that's where it's going to be. But let's pay attention to where that is, okay? Let's make sure that we're using a very inexpensive instance. We'll give it a second to load. If you do not see the cost, just drag these over until you do. It just depends on your screen, right? So once this loads, it will tell us that this is probably the cheapest. I think that is the cheapest because nothing's going to go lower than at 500 megabytes of RAM. So I think we're already set to it. I'm not going to wait for that to load. It'll take forever. Notice the red line. There is no error. That's just what it shows. And so I'm going to go for password authentication here. And what I'm going to do for this account is I'm going to type in DAX as the username and then testing with a capital T-E-S-T-I-N-G 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 because it wants an uppercase, a lowercase, some numbers and a certain length. And that's what works for me. So now that I have those filled in, SSH, we're going to keep that open. We're going to go to disk. You can leave it on premium if you want. I'm going to go to standard. I want to save some money just in case I forget to turn this machine off. It's going to set up some networking for us, which is totally fine. We're going to go to management. And I believe, so there should be guest OS install here. It is not here. It's the next step, I believe. Where is it? I know you're in here. Let's go back one step here. I have a feeling it's on this page because you can install the guest OS metrics right away. So I'm just seeing here. I cannot seem to remember where it is. I might have skipped over it because I'm going so quick here. Well, maybe it's not set here. So when we go to do the other virtual machine, we'll see if it's actually there. But for this one, we'll just launch it without it, which is totally fine. I was going to do one that way anyway. And so we'll go ahead there and create that virtual machine. Okay, now while that is going, and by the way, if you think you call that number, that's not me. So, you know, you can call it if you want, but it won't go to me. So that's going to go ahead and deploy that. What I'm going to do now is go and launch another virtual machine in the same environment. So this one, this time around, is going to be, again, it's going to be Linux. We're going to choose DAX here. And this one is going to be Jadzia DAX. And we, this time around, are going to choose Ubuntu Server LTS. So this one's a minimal install, and this one here has a bit more to it. We're going to choose Gen 2. This is now $4.86, which is strange. It looks like it was the same one before. I don't know why the other one was so more expensive. I could have sworn it said $40, but maybe I was mistaken. The red means nothing as per usual. It's just Azure tricking us. We're going to call the username here DAX, testing with a capital T-E-S-T-I-N-G. You know what I'm trying to say here. And I'm going to do testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we will go next to disks. We'll stick with premium for this time. It doesn't really matter. If we go to advanced here, there's no interesting options there. This is all fine. This looks good. We go to management. So now notice here, so we didn't have it for the minimal install, but for this one we do. We can actually put in the guest OS Diagnostics, and what it will do is it will have to create itself a storage account. So that will be in Azure Storage to store our diagnostic data. And so that seems like a good idea to me. So what we'll do is we're going to go to next. But notice we didn't have it for the minimal install, probably because it doesn't have the agent, what's called the WAG agent installed for it to do that by default. So just notice that it varies on some machines. We're going to go to next. We're going to hit review and create. And we're not done yet. We're going to create one more virtual machine, and this time it's going to be a Windows. Once I hit the create button here, we're going to go back to virtual machines, and this time I'm going to launch a Windows machine, and I'm going to use, we're going to put in the same group here. I'm going to call this one Tobin, or let's call it Leela Dax here. And this time I'm going to choose a Windows server. So I'm going to go to Windows Server here. We have a lot of options. I'm not that great with Windows servers. I'm going to choose a Gen 2 Windows server here. It's not going to let us get away with this B1L. It's not big enough. You need a lot more compute and memory. I think it's like 2 and 4. But I just remember to always choose DS2 V2, which is pretty hefty. It's pretty expensive. Maybe I could choose something cheaper, like the DS1. No, I need two CPUs. So DS2 V3, that's when you're launching a Windows server. If you don't do that, they'll complain. And that will probably be pretty darn expensive, but we got to make sure that we just shut this off and get through this as quick as possible. I'm going to choose the same thing as always. So I'm going to put in DAX. And then for the password, I'm going to do testing 123, capital on that T, 456. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because it wants 12 characters. We're going to let it do on the RDP. That's totally fine. Sure, premium SSD. We're not going to keep this around for very long. We're going to scroll on down, go to management, and notice that you can enable OS Diagnostics here. I'm not going to do that here, just so I can show you it in the other variation. We're going to go to next. We're going to go hit review and create, and we're going to go ahead and create this instance whenever it lets us do it. There we go. Okay, we'll hit create. And now it's deploying. So we have these 3 virtual machines we're creating. And so what I'm going to do is make my way back to virtual machines here. And so I have the 2 there. I'm going to give it a refresh, make sure I can see the 3rd one creating. We don't see it just yet, but these ones are running. So what I'm going to do is open up Curzon. I'm going to open up Jedzia. And one has the guest the guest or the, what's it called? Diagnostic settings. It's the guest metrics installed, and the other one does not. So if I scroll down here, so I just want to show you there's a lot of variation, and sometimes, you know, you do it one way, it works, another way it doesn't. So for Jedzia, it was installed on default. So that's the one that is using Ubuntu standard. And then this is the minimal install, where it's saying, hey, do you want to install the metrics? And you have to pick a storage account. If you didn't, then you would have the option to create one. Here it's called DAX DIAG. So I just want to show you, we're going to go ahead and enable those guest level monitoring metrics. Okay. So we have a storage account, and that's where the data is going to go. And this will probably fail because I don't think it has the necessary things installed, but I just wanted to show you could do it that way. But another thing we're going to need is we're going to need a log analytics workspace. So all a log analytics workspace is a place to store your logs. It is essentially a data lake for a lot of different resources. So you can put all sorts of resources under here, and that way you can search across them, see how this failed. If you ever have a failure like this, the way you'd investigate this is you go in here, and even though it says a SAS token for the storage account couldn't generate, it's kind of a misleading thing here, because if I actually click up into my notifications, we go to our activity log, we can see kind of what something has happened here. So I know this failed. It might have not show up here yet. Sometimes it takes time to show up. So we'll revisit this later, but it would show red errors here. And if we looked into there, it would tell us that Python's not installed on that machine because it's a minimal Linux install. So if you run into those problems, that's the reason why. Some VMs are a bit easier to work with than others. But we're looking at log analytics. And again, it's just a place to collect your logs. But I want to see because I think Jitsi is the one that actually is the one that is working properly. But if we go down to metrics or logs, it's going to say, hey, if you want to use logs, you're going to have to go ahead and create, you have to enable it. But what it's really doing is just creating a log analytics workspace. So if I click this here, what's going to tell me is say, hey, you don't have one, we'll create a default one for you. I don't want to do it that way. What I want to do is create one myself and then link it through there. Or what I could do is make it through automation. So what I'm going to do is, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do through automation. So there's another service called Automation Accounts. And this particular service is for configuration management, update management. And it's a way for us to keep our VMs up to date. And so this one's going to be called DAX. Oh, it's too short, doesn't like that. DAX Automation. And I'm going to choose the resource group DAX. It's East US. And here it's going to say Azure Run as Account. So this is going to give it more permissions so that it can run as a contributor role. And that way it will have access to resources to do what it wants to do. So we'll go ahead and deploy that. And then once this is deployed, we'll create our workspace through this. Because I found an issue where if I made this and tried to link it, it just didn't link. And I don't want to have those problems. So I'm just going to make my life a little bit easier by making it through here. So under here, if we go to Update Management, it's going to say, hey, you need a workspace in order to use update management. If you're wondering what update management is, it keeps your VMs up to date by applying patches. So if we drop down here, we're just going to go ahead and create a new workspace. And I'm going to do it that way, because then it'll be automatically associated with that workspace on creation. And we'll let that go there for a bit. But while that's setting up a new workspace for us, if you go over to Runbooks, this is the power of, oh, I'm not, it wants to make that thing there. So I'm just going to click OK there. Don't worry about that discard. But the whole power of this is that it can apply patches. It can manage the state of your VMs. But if you need to do something, like run something like a series of run commands, they have a bunch of different run books here. So there's a variety of different kinds, and I think we can click into them. I think there was something about SQL that sounded kind of how to use an SQL command on a automation run book. So yeah, it's just a run book. So run book just means like a series of run commands, something that you're automating on your server, and you do it through here. So update management looks like it is now working. We didn't press that enable button initially, but it worked there. But if we wanted to have VMs under here, we'd have to go ahead and add them manually. And so we're just going to wait for those to show up. Alternatively, if we go back to our server, or sorry, one of our VMs, we should be able to add it this way, or it'll just tell us to go that way anyway. So there should be like update management or something in here. Could be configuration management. Yeah, that still would be through something, right? So it'd probably be still through automation. But I could have swore there was, maybe it's guest and host updates. Yeah, so here it's just saying go to Azure Automation. So you don't really set it through here. You have to associate it through Azure Automation. And so these are ready to enable. So I'm going to say go ahead and enable those. I don't know where our Windows server is. We definitely spun one up. It's not a big deal if we don't have it. It's not really crucial to this tutorial, but it would have been nice to show the Windows 10 there. I'm going to go see what happened to our Windows server. Oh, it is there. Okay, Leela's there. So we'll take a look at that in a second. But we're just adding those there. We're not going to really apply any patches. I just want to show you how to associate them there, and just to highlight the fact that there are run books, which are pretty cool. And you can also do other things, like if you need to like install Python packages or stuff like that to do stuff, you could do that as well. So there's a bunch of interesting things in there, but it's kind of like a side dish to the follow along here. So this would have created our workspace. So now let's go over to our workspaces. And we have one here. And if you're just curious what it looks like, if we go here, there's nothing super exciting. You just put the name and region in, and it has the default pay-as-you-go. So you're not really missing out on creating one by hand there. But underneath here, what we can do is see if our virtual machines are actually associated with this here. So if we go under virtual machine, you're going to see that these ones are connecting, which is interesting because I didn't do anything to connect them. I'm not sure why that's happening, but I'm going to hit connect here. And that will connect that. A lot of times I'll come in here, I have to manually connect them. I don't know if it's because we put them in the what do you call it, within the automation there. If we go back to automation, which ones did I choose? I already forgot. Update management. Well, they're not showing up here now, but I know they're there. Maybe we triggered it when we were doing there. But anyway, the point is that you have to make sure that those are configured so that it's actually sending data over to the workspaces so that we can then use the logs and things like that. So if we go back to our virtual machines over here, you can see they're connecting. And this takes forever. While this is going, let's go take a look at storage accounts. And actually, a better way would just be to go look at the virtual machine individually here. So we'll just go back to my virtual machines, and I go to the resource group. We scroll on down here. We should see a storage account within here. Let's just type in storage. There it is. Whoops. And the thing is that we can actually view some of the data in here. So if you go to Open Explorer, you'd have to install this. It's for Windows. I think it's for Mac as well. But once you have the Storage Explorer open, you can just click Open here. And it'll open up once it's installed on your computer, of course. And what I can do, if we have any data, it might not be collecting any data yet, but if we go down to our storage accounts here, oh, here it is down below, and expand it under tables. So it has this WAD, that is the name of the agent that is collecting data. And here you can see that it's already collecting stuff. All right. And it's collecting for Jadzia DAX. And so I'm just kind of looking at the data that's collecting, nothing super interesting. But the thing is that we're going to make our way over to logs because by default, Azure collects host metrics, so things about the instance like CPU usage, but there's things that it doesn't collect like memory and other things like that. So that's why we need to turn on this setting here, the diagnostic settings, so we can collect those metrics. These are called guest metrics. So we have memory, network, file disk, and storage. So if you wanted to know how much storage was left on the actual disk with the virtual machine, or how much memory was being used, you'd need that set up here. Once this is enabled, you can send data over into Azure Monitor and other places. It's not showing App Analytics. I think that's for, or Log Insight, whatever the name of the service is. It's for that one. I think is for the Windows one. So we'll see that when we go over there. But syncs just means we're going to send data from here to Azure Monitor, right? But we'd have to have preview to see that. Nothing that interesting here. But if we go over to logs now, this should not be showing up here anymore. So if this is still showing an enable screen, then we got to go back to our log analytics. We'll click into here. We'll go down to virtual machines and we'll see if it's connected yet. So it still says it's connecting, right? This one's ready though. And I haven't even done anything with that one yet. So what we'll do while we're waiting for these Linux ones to spin up, we'll go back over here to our virtual machines, and we'll go find that Windows machine, which I don't know why it's not showing up here. There it is. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and connect to it. So I am on a Windows machine, so I'm going to shape here, and I'm going to click on RDP, and I'm going to download that file. I'm going to double click this file on my Windows machine, and I'll be able to open this up instantly. It was called DAX testing 1, 2, 3. Whoops. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Looks good to me. We'll hit OK. We'll say yes. Because if you want to collect particular metrics, the guest metrics, you have to enable, like when you're on Windows Server, you have to enable it to send performance counters. So I'll give it a moment here. It doesn't take too long. While that's going, we should look to see if we actually have the settings set up here, the diagnostic settings. And so this is what I'm talking about, the enable guest level monitoring. So we want CPU utilization, disk, and network. So we'll go ahead and click that there. And while that's going, and go back here. And so this has now started up. I don't know much about Windows servers, but I do know how to turn on At least the last time I did, I know how to turn on the performance counter. So see here, it says online performance counters are not started. So I can right click this and then just say start performance counters. And that will have it start sending data over to our storage accounts, assuming that this is enabled here. So this is going to go ahead and install WAG into the Windows server so it can send back metrics. And so we got a lot of things going on here, but let's go back to Jadzia. And I want to see now if I can use logs now. There we go. So it's now connected to the workspace, so it knows where to send that data. And you can pull up, when you go to logs, it'll show different types of default queries. If you're in the actual group here, you'll have the same screen, but it'll show you across all possible resources. So it's a little bit easier to figure out like useful queries for virtual machines when you do it through here. And there's some that we can run right away. So if we go over to the Diagnostics, we could, or actually availability is a good example. So heartbeats will tell you if the server is live. So a server will have heartbeats. So every whatever second or minute, it's going to say, hey, I'm still alive. That's what a heartbeat is. So we'll go ahead and run that. And we'll give it a moment here. I'm not sure why it's crying. If that doesn't work, I'll just click off and try that again. So go back to availability, we'll hit run. And it has the right scope. If you're wondering how it knows what to check, that's all based on scope there. And for whatever reason, it just decides that it doesn't really want to run right now. That's a bit frustrating. But if it's not working for this one, we can always check our other one, which is Curzon. And we can go see if this one works. That's why I made multiple servers, because I knew one of these might not work right away. So we'll go ahead and run this one here. It says no logs are configured. So that makes me think that our workspace here, if we go back over to here and we go down to virtual machines, that they're actually not linked. Oh, they still are connecting. There you go. So it's a bit misleading. It looked like we could query, but we still can't. Let's go take a look at this virtual machine here, our Lila one still. And let's see if we can do anything with it yet. So if we go down to Diagnostic Settings, it looks like it's installed. And so if we go to Performance Counters, these are the counters that it should be collecting data on. You could do custom if you want and change those values, but we're just going to leave it basic for the time being. Go ahead and save that. And I believe we can do logs over here on this one. So we'll go over to availability. I'm going to load that into the editor this time instead of hitting run. And I can hit run, and it will return and says that it has a count of 7. So 7 heartbeats, that's good. If you want to create rules, you could easily do that. There's actually some nice ones here. If we go into here, this won't work unless our metrics are working, our guess metrics. But there's a bunch down below here. I'm just trying to see one that might be interesting for us to set. So you might go here, and I don't think I like that one. Say this one here. I'm just going to clear this all the way out. Oops. So here they even say to create this alert, just hit the plus new button here. So we can go here. And sometimes it does this. It doesn't actually bring it over, which is weird. So you have to go back. I told you, like this, the UI for Azure is super, super buggy. So if you don't have any confidence, don't worry. It happens to all of us. So we'll go back to our alerts. And I'm going to load that into the editor. And what I'm going to do is just copy it. And we're going to go ahead and hit run. And so here we're getting some data back. I think it's going to complain about the time generated, but if we go and create a new alert, oh man, it just does not want to copy anything over, eh? And so I can't even paste. We'll go back to here. I'm going to copy this. I noticed it was because I had it double clicked. Maybe it just creates one what you have selected. And so it should complain about this, but it's not, so that's great. And so we can go here and we can put a threshold to 5. I'm just putting any value here, and that gives you a monthly cost for that alert. So you can hit review and create. Please correct the following details. Where? Oh, the alert name. Okay. My alert. And we will hit review and create. We'll hit create. And so there we can create an alert. So we could create an alert like our memory's running out of stuff. And those are kind of useful things to do. So talking about metrics, we're going to make our way over here. And notice we have host metrics and guest metrics. So host metrics are general ones that are available to us, and guest metrics are memory and stuff like that. So if we have that, you're going to notice now we have like disk and memory and things like that. If we didn't have that installed, we wouldn't be able to access this information. So what I can do is go ahead here and try disk time. I don't know if it'll show us anything right now because it might have not collected enough information. We go over to virtual host. We'll have different metrics here. So a standard one would be like CPU usage. Okay, so that one is displaying there. The poor performance metrics always take a little bit more time to collect, so I'm not sure if I'll stick around to show you that, but if we go over to availability, sometimes when you need to go debug performance, like you can hit run, and this will tell you if it's actually collecting information. So C right now, it shows me nothing, so it hasn't collected anything for process, memory, or processor. But if it did, then we could go and use these other ones down below here. So we have free disk space, so that's a really useful one to have, which we can't get metrics on that right now. But that's what we've been trying to do, is collect that information. So let's go back to our workspace. And what I'm going to do is take a look at our virtual machines that are connected. And this one has an error, and that's Curzon. And I'm not surprised because, again, it's a minimal Windows Linux instance, so probably couldn't install the agent. So that's expected, but I just wanted to show you that edge case. If we go into the Jadzia one, which is the one we were waiting for this entire time, we should hopefully be able to see some metrics. So if we go down here and we choose guest metrics, I want something with memory here, like percentage. Okay, so it's still not showing me anything, and that's fine. If we're not getting any metrics, what we can do is we can go log into this instance and give it some data so that it does something, all right? So what I'll do is go all the way to up the top here into my overview. I'm going to copy this public IP address. We're going to open up our Cloud Shell and make sure that it's in Bash, all right? And we're going to type in SSH DAX. And then we're going to paste the IP address in. We'll hit enter. We'll say yes. And the password is testing1234556 with a capital T. And what we can do here is we can install a tool called StressNG. What that tool does is it will help us do stress testing. And so that allows us to make some metrics. So we'll go ahead and install that via Snap. Snap is the new package manager for Ubuntu. It used to be apt-get or apt. And it doesn't take too long to install. And while it's installing, I actually have a pre-made line here to check the memory or to fill up the memory. I'm just going to go ahead and paste this line in. So this is stress-ng VM bytes, and it uses awk, and it's going to do memory availability, and it's going to fill it up to 90%. So we want to have 90% memory usage. I'm going to go hit enter. I'm just going to let that run. Now it's not outputting anything, but it definitely is running. There we go. And so we're just going to leave it there. And so soon enough, we should have some information. And I think if I go there, yep, it's still there, so it's fine. So now if we go over to down to our logs, and we go back to performance, and we just choose this one here, we might see something now. Again, it takes time. See, now it looks in the 15-minute window here. But I just want to see that it's collecting anything. For me, it doesn't matter what it collects, just collects something for me, you know? So I think it'll just take a little bit of time. While we're doing that, we should make our way back over to our workspace because there's some other settings that are kind of interesting that I noticed. If you go over to agent configuration, you can collect additional information over here. So we have performance counters for Windows and Linux. I think we have to set the memory one here if we want it to actually appear here. So I don't know if there's a way to set all of them, but I'm going to just choose some here. So I'm going to do memory used. We'll do logical use space here. We'll go here and do free space. I think that might be the reason why it's not showing up for us. Maybe process time here. We did use memory, use percentage of use space. We will do reads and writes. So here we have some for our Linux. So I think if we set that, then we should be able to see some information. Syslogs is just a type of logs that you can collect. We're not going to look into those today. But yeah, that's the management there. We could also try setting some here, maybe one for memory. I can't remember what the one for memory is called here because they do all of this kind of stuff. Like Windows has so much stuff, I can't make sense of it. I think we might want paged owls and page. What's the one called there? Bytes. We'll give that a go. And we'll see if that starts collecting information. I'm going to go back over to here. And, oh, this is Curzon. That's the Windows machine. We're going to go to the Linux machine here, and we'll give it another go. See if we get anything this time around. So we'll go back to performance. We'll say what is being collected, run. Okay. And so I think we're just going to have to wait a little bit. So I'm just going to stop the video here, and I'll see you back in maybe 15, 20 minutes, okay? All right, so I'm still waiting here, and I don't seem to be seeing any data, but that's okay because there's another way we can kind of approximate this, and we don't have to wait forever, especially if you don't have a lot of time like me. The thing is that Azure has a log analytics tutorial, and within here, they have a demo environment that I'm very familiar with. And so this can approximate exactly what I'm trying to show you here. If you notice at the top here, it says Microsoft Azure monitoring logs, demo, log, blade. So if we go to queries and we go down to virtual machines and we look at what data is being collected, we can hit run here. And this is the kind of information we are trying to see, right? This is what we want to see, what it's actually collecting. That's okay. We're not doing remote desktop anymore here. And if we go to virtual memory available, we'll just clear that out there and run that. This is kind of the information we're trying to find. All right. So I just wanted to show you that when you collect those metrics that you can run these queries, and this is that language up there with Kusto. And that's pretty much it. That's all I really wanted to show you. So let's go ahead and tear down all our stuff. It's all self-contained within a resource group. So what we can do is go to all resources in the top left corner there. And we called it DAX. So we can search for DAX here. Whoops. Actually, it's all over the place. We just click here into the name. And we'll hit delete resource group. Type in DAX. We have a lot of resources created for this one. And there you go. So yeah, hopefully that helps you understand those relationships between automation accounts where we can run runbooks, do patching, stuff like that, install Python stuff. The fact that log analytics is basically a data lake for all your data, that you can create alerts, that you have metrics, you have guest OS metrics, which collect those three values, the memory, the network, and the additional CPU information or disk space, and just the variance there so you don't get stuck. So there you go.